Good evening, everyone. My name is Sylvia Maxfield. I think I know most of you, and most of you know me. Welcome to our Cheers to Careers panel, Pivoting, Networking, and More, an online Zoom event targeted to the class of 2018 and other friars of the last decade. Quick public service announcement to those of you who are from the PCSB class of 2018. We'll be putting a link to a ranking survey in the chat panel, and we would be grateful. We are grateful to those of you who've already responded to the request to fill out the survey, but if any of you have not, we would be grateful if you did and pass it on to other PCSB graduates from the class of 2018. So this is a very timely topic. A lot has changed in the world since you graduated from PC. A lot has changed in the world in the last 8 months, and hopefully some of that will unchange soon. But a few years out is often when I hear from graduates that, you know, they're starting to have that little tickle of a thought about maybe switching companies or switching careers. I wrote a letter of recommendation not too long ago for a young woman who'd graduated a few years ago, was working in finance and had decided to go back and get a graduate degree in social work. So that's quite a big pivot. Most of you are probably not thinking about pivoting that extensively. And so we're here tonight to talk about how to recognize, when it's important to take some steps to think a little bit more about pivoting your career and how you can get started on finding new opportunities, whether they're in your current field or in a different field, an adjacent field. We've got a wonderful group of panelists with us tonight. And we also have a few alums who are going to be making guest appearances via video. So with us live on Zoom is Chris Walker, class of 86, who's a principal with the investment firm HarborVest. Jeremy Duffy, class of 93, who is co-founder and managing partner of Isle Brewers Guild. So cheers. I actually, I'm going to wait to have my first sip of beer, but I've got a Lord Hobo IPA, Jeremy. So Lord Hobo is one of my, do you guys brew for Lord Hobo?
We do not.
You do not.
It's okay though.
Oh, well, sorry. And Lauren Jones, class of 05, who is the Massachusetts director of Apprenti. And Paul Calley, class of 12, our very own Senior Major Gifts Officer in the Office of Institutional Advancement here at Providence College. So we hope to have time. I will make sure that we have time at the end to answer questions. So please use the Q&A function to submit any questions. You can submit them anytime, and we'll take them up towards the end. So we're going to start by asking each of our panelists here with us tonight to tell us just a little bit about yourself and what you do today. And I'm gonna start with Lauren, please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Lauren Jones. As the dean mentioned, I graduated in 2005. Today, I am the Massachusetts director of a nonprofit called Apprenti. What I do through that, I cover the Massachusetts market to work with companies looking to bridge the tech talent gap as well as the diversity gap for in-demand tech jobs like software developers, cybersecurity analysts, and more. And then I stay active with the PC community, and I'm also active with a few other nonprofits in the New England area as well.
Thank you very much, Lauren. We'll go to Chris next.
Thanks, it's nice to meet all of you. As the dean said, my name is Chris Walker. I'm an 86 grad. Long history at Providence College. Between meeting my wife there, my older brother went there. I have 2 children there and a niece as well. So a lot of history at Providence. After graduation, the topic that we're going to talk about tonight is pivoting. I pivoted and did something very different from what a finance major did. I was in the military for 11 years. I was a pilot in the Navy. and then transitioned out of that, went back to graduate school at BC, where I got my master's in finance. And I'd been at Hubbard, which is a global private equity firm. I've been there for about 22 years now. Besides investing into managers that invest into funds, or if you're familiar with the fund of funds group, I'm also the ESG chairman at our firm. So focus on environmental, social, governance, investing our institutional and high net worth capital responsibly.
Great, thanks, Chris. Well, maybe we'll head over to you, Paul, next.
Hi, I'm Paul Cali. I graduated PC in 2012. Also met my wife at this school, so both 2012 grads. I was a psychology major at PC, but really involved as a student. When I graduated, I initially was thinking I was going to work with students with autism somewhere in the Boston, Rhode Island area. Escaped to Europe with two buddies from Providence for a couple months because we didn't get to do a true abroad experience. Came back and I was really involved as a student and always kind of had a side interest in higher ed administration. So I had an opportunity to join the institutional advancement team in the alumni relations department, overseeing the Student Alumni Association, and kind of spent a few years on the alumni relations side, and pivoted over to fundraising about 5 years ago. So now I am one of our major gift officers and cover the West Coast, so both Northern and Southern California, as well as the DC and New York, New Jersey area.
Great, thanks, Paul. And last but by no means least, Jeremy.
Yes, hello, everyone. It's great to be with all these friars tonight. I'm a proud member of the class of '93, political science major, which we'll talk a lot about pivoting later, but there was multiple coming from that discipline. But currently I am a co-founder and managing partner of Isle Brewers Guild, which was founded in 2015. It's a diverse business, but really the core is that we're a craft beer, we're a large scale craft beer producer that produces for multiple partners to help their capacity needs. We also have a retail side as well with a beer hall and beer garden and a lot of very cool things that are going to happen in 2021, which I'm very excited about. I'm really happy to be here with this group. And thank you.
Great. Well, welcome to all of our panelists. I'm going to start with a question that's a bit of a setup. And the question is whether you had a plan for what you wanted to do when you graduated from Providence College, and whether you're still on that plan. And while Lauren and Chris, who I'm going to throw this question to, think about that, we're going to run a little video clip from our first video guest, Rudy Klein Thomas, who is going to tell you what class year he is, because I can't remember.
Good afternoon, fellow PC grads and alumni. My name is Rudy Klein Thomas. I'm the founder and managing partner of Mastery. We're a venture capital firm based in San Francisco and New York City. And I am here today to share with you a couple of personal anecdotes about possibly pivoting and or changing your careers. I'd like to let you guys know that post PC, I had a plan of exactly what I thought I wanted to do and exactly who I thought I wanted to be moving forward, and nothing's gone according to plan whatsoever. My saving grace was, after a couple years and realizing that everything that, I was a finance major and an accounting major at school. I became a sports agent. I realized that I had a knack for entrepreneurship. And I stopped having a plan, and I just basically started following the opportunities that presented themselves along the way, and has led me to where I am today. So I'd say about 4 or 5 years after graduating, I pretty much scrapped that plan. I realized that nothing that I was doing or all the opportunities that were presented to me at the time were things that I'd ever thought of before, and I started going a little bit more with the flow. So I always had a plan, and I still have a plan, but I understand that, generally speaking, nothing ever goes according to plan.
There is that saying that if you want to make God smile, make a plan. So Lauren, how about you? Did you have a plan, and are you still on that plan?
I'm definitely not still on that plan. My senior year at PC, I was a political science major. I was accepted to the School of Communications for grad school at Syracuse University. But then I also got my first job offer, and I decided I would pursue a job in the real world, even though it had nothing to do with political science or communications. I dipped my toe in insurance, working in insurance for 2 years. I had the chance to defer to Syracuse, but I had to make that decision after about 6 months, and I decided to stick with real world experience. I was getting a paycheck, I was living on my own. It was, new and exciting. But I definitely have pivoted along the way. I'd like to say I get about a 2-year itch where I have found ways to pivot either with the same organization or company or totally changing. And I think my biggest change was when I realized insurance was not meant for me. And I really wanted to get back into politics and public affairs. And so I was fortunate to work for 10 years in state and city government, but that 10-year experience had a lot of different twists and turns, which I think really helped to advance my experience and add some muscle in my experience in government. But then somehow I was like, I still need to do something different, and felt like my experience could bring me to not only nonprofit, but thinking about startup and entrepreneurship, launching a whole new market for this new nonprofit that I joined in 2019. So quite a twisty, turny journey over the last 15 years. Probably the one thing that has stayed stagnant is I've stayed in Boston all this time. But throughout that time, the journey has been quite interesting.
Great. I love the winding path. And you're so young. It's kind of hard to imagine that you've had that many twists and turns. And Chris, we'll turn to you. You alluded to a pivot. What was your plan when you graduated?
Yeah, so as the elder statesman of the group, I would say, because I have the benefit of age here, maybe I'm back on plan. But it's interesting because I do speak with a lot of Providence College students. I speak with a lot of military people. And, I think very few out there really truly have a plan that they're able to follow. I just think that you have so much to learn along the way there. And people don't necessarily know what they want to do. You could be a finance major, and the options that you could have to choose, are thousands of different opportunities and different paths that you go down. So for me, originally, I had 2 older brothers. They were finance majors. One was an investment banker. The other one was a broker. And I thought that they would follow along what they did as well. And my dad had nudged from a family of 7 boys, so nudged me in the direction of looking into the military. And so it was interesting. I went down the path where came on campus, Ernst and Julio Gallo, their sales team. And, if you were hired by them, you went out to Napa Valley for 6 months and drank wine and learned how to sell. And I thought, gosh, that's going to be for me. And they were coming out with this unique thing called wine coolers. So I was all excited to pursue that opportunity. Went to the final interview, didn't get hired, and then went into the military. And I was in, as I said, for 11 years. And when I got out, the military was kind enough to pay for my graduate school, and then transitioned from there back into sort of the working world. And that was, you talk about a big pivot, going from something completely unrelated from the military back into the business world 11 years later. It was difficult, but having that benefit of graduate school and getting a good internship, but in the end, it all works out, because for the firm that I interviewed at HarborVest, where I am now, it was literally my first interview, and come to find out, some of the founders there were former military people. So when you think you're pivoting and you have nothing to do with the other opportunity, it really comes, full circle around there. So, you know, I look back on it and I wouldn't have traded anything in the world, even though it was an incredibly difficult pivot to do.
From hoping that you were going to sell wine to the military. Yeah, I'm not sure which pivot you were talking about, Chris, but that one
To think I was going to be a Navy pilot. Yeah, it was either Navy pilot or a wine cooler salesman. So
yeah, that's a shift.
Quite different.
The next topic I want to turn to is when you're ready to start trying to make a change, to really taking some steps towards a pivot. And I'm going to throw that question to Jeremy and Paul. And while you're thinking about that, we're going to have our next invited video guest, Lisa Bosquet, who's also a PC alum.
Good evening, fellow Friars. This is Lisa Bosquet, and I'm here tonight to offer you a little piece of career advice. You may be asking, when is it the right time to make a change in your career? I'm going to offer you a lesson that was actually taught to me by a professor at Providence College that has stuck with me throughout my entire career. It's fairly straightforward. It's what I call the stoplight advice. If you're in the green zone in your job, things are going fairly well. You get up, you go to work, you kind of get all of your assignments or your work done. It's pretty straightforward. You come home, piece of cake. If you're in the red zone of your career, things might not be as simple. You might be disengaged, you might have a conflict, things are uncomfortable. That's where the voices in your head might be saying, I hate my job. That's an obvious point in your career when you need to make a change, is if you're not feeling purpose or meaning in your job, it's time to move on. But the zone where you really need to catch yourself and really look inside and see if you're in the zone that makes the most difference in your career is the yellow zone. When you're in the yellow zone in your job, you're stretching, you're learning. Things might be uncomfortable, but it challenges you to rise to the next level. My piece of advice to you is that you should strive for that yellow zone. When you're in the yellow zone, you're going to grow faster. You're going to stretch yourself. You're going to get noticed. So take a look at yourself. Take a look at your job. If you're coasting along, that might be also the time for you to make that change. So cheers to your career.
Wonderful. Some of you, Jeremy, I think you know Lisa. That was great. So we're going to go to you first, Jeremy, on that question of, how do you know when it's time?
Yeah, and it is a great question, and it's a hard question too. And I think Lisa actually defined it incredibly well. I never thought about it like that, like a stop sign. But particularly the yellow is a very, very interesting concept. And for me, it was pretty simple. Like to go back, again, I was a political science major, but I worked in sports marketing, and I worked in the PC sports marketing and in sports information side. And I feel like I spent more time there than I did actually in class at some level, but there was a lot of hours. So please understand I was doing both. But what I really realized that it was more about, I followed my passions on stuff. And in the case in political science, I wanted to do that from an education standpoint. From a sports marketing standpoint, I really wanted that to be my career. So anyways, moving forward to a lot of different pivots from sports marketing to ultimately joining a firm that my father had begun called Duffy and Shanley. My father is a proud member of the class of '61. So I was the only child that was supportive and went to Providence College. So I'm the favorite child on that side. But I joined the firm in sports marketing. But it's very interesting. At that point in time, I sort of learned the interesting part about what my career was about was entrepreneurship. So even joining an interesting, established firm, it was still, they threw me in the deep end to run this sports marketing side and build it, right? And then I got more involved with the company, and I became head of business development, so I could kind of hit all of the areas of our public affairs, public relations divisions, and our advertising division, as well as the sports marketing. And then just an interesting thing happened, probably about 10 years ago, 10 to 8 years ago, is the firm, which is a wonderful firm in Providence, Rhode Island. It's about to celebrate its 48th year of existence, and in advertising communications firm, like that's like 110 years. It's pretty remarkable run by Duffy and Shanley. Partner, vice president of business development, just felt comfortable. I was too comfortable, and sort of my passion and my entrepreneurship came out to say that I of course I could have done it for 30 years and kept my family legacy, and thankfully my brother was the president of the firm at the time, so there was that still legacy side, but I just something was eating at me, and the combination of feeling comfortable meets that industry and the inability to take it to the next level and go nationally and internationally is very, very difficult, particularly out of the Providence market, really got me thinking about ideas. And ultimately what I found my entire path up to that point was about entrepreneurship and stretching and thinking about new and exciting ideas. And that's what I did. And I took the leap of faith, and I left the firm in 2013 with a business plan and a dream, and not much of a safety net. But I figured that I had to get out of that yellow, like Lisa said. I needed to go for that green.
It was good to see Lisa, because Lisa was actually part of the group that hired me fresh out of PC when she was still at the college.
Oh my gosh.
Part of my final round of interviews, so that just brought me back a little bit.
And that was on your pivot, right?
Yeah, that was during my pivot. I think when it comes to how do you know it's time for change, my general rule of thumb, especially being young and for our generation, is if you're at a place where you feel that you're no longer challenged or you're not learning, I think it's an opportunity for general self-reflection to see if you've actually, before jumping ship or looking for the next thing, to see if you've actually maximized the role that you're in. Have you done everything that you can to provide value and implement change to not only your job, but your organization or the company that you work for, rather than think, I did a year or two in this job, I worked hard, I tried my best, but did you actually, put in the effort to create change for that group that you're working with? So before jumping ship, I would encourage people to self-reflect and make sure that they feel like they've maximized that potential, because I think, especially when you're young, it's a common misconception. I think there's a difference between a job and a career. A career is certainly kind of a lifelong journey and something that you have to work up to. And that takes a number of jobs and a lot of opportunities and a lot of hard work to get to that point where you're in that dream job or position that you've always wanted to be in. So make sure that you're putting in the time and you're taking advantage of every opportunity. And if after it going through that process, you find like there's still more that you can do, there's still more you can offer, and there's just not opportunity at that moment, I think that's a good chance to then, pivot and start thinking about what might be next. But I would encourage you to also be patient and hang in there and try and do as much as you can before making it.
Great. Different pieces of advice coming out here. So, yes, self-reflection, particularly, am I in the yellow zone? But sometimes you have to pivot because the market has made it so. So, I'm gonna ask Chris in a minute to talk about the balance between an internal motivation and a process of self-discovery versus the market kind of given you a little kick and a nudge towards pivoting, doing something different. But first, I'm going to bring in our third and final remote guest, Patty Hubbard. She's got a little bit of advice and a story about a recent pivot of hers.
Hello, my name is Patty Hubbard, class of 1993, and I wanted to talk to you a bit about my career and a couple important transitions and things that helped me when I did have to pivot. My most recent pivot was 4 years ago when I found myself part of a really big agency that had grown to be too big, where I felt like I wasn't learning and I wasn't being an entrepreneur and I wasn't building something anymore. So those were always important qualities for me and in my job. And so I decided to start my own company, combining my 25 years of experience in sports and entertainment and brand marketing. And I've loved it. It's been challenging and hard, but I think deep down I knew I wanted to be back building something and challenging myself. And I think being a former athlete, college athlete, that's part of who I am. And I love a competitive environment and I love a challenge. And I think knowing what my personal strengths are and the skills and things that drive me, encouraged me to start my own company. So that's been my most recent pivot and experience. And I hope that is helpful to you guys.
Patty, out in the northern part of California, breathing way too much bad air because of the fires for the last few months, actually, by this point. And there's a theme here that's a little bit sports related in a couple of cases, actually. hadn't really thought about that. So I'm going to turn this question now to Chris on the internal versus the external motivations.
Sure. So, anytime you make that dramatic pivot, I think it comes from, there's an impetus that caused this thing to happen. Market conditions will always dictate what you may do next, but usually that's the worst time to make a transition, because if it's a downturn and they're laying off people or firing people, and unfortunately you're part of that, it's tough during a down economy to pivot. So I think that there are other things, whether it's personal, whether it's just sector change, whether there's just little subtle things that cause you to think about, what do I want to do next? When I did 11 years in the military, I was thinking of, maybe do I do 20? The military makes you very comfortable. They take care of you. And, I already had a child at the time. And to make that pivot, they were going to close the base that I was at and then move me down to New Orleans. And believe me, there's nothing wrong with New Orleans. I would have loved to be there. But the idea was, this wasn't really in my plan. And this is what really caused my wife and I to think about, what do we want to do? Where do we want to be? I was thinking of going into the airlines. I was thinking of going back to school. So it really was not necessarily a market condition. It was just a personal choice based on what was going on. The big thing, and I think Paul made a really good point, is when you are young, you have the ability to pivot and pivot much more easily than you are when you are married with kids and you're locked in, and wealth creation that is where you are in later parts of life makes it a lot harder. And it doesn't really make sense either if you're going to pivot into a new industry, if you're 50, 60 years of age as well. So if you have that benefit of that insight to know when is the time to pivot, that's a good thing. But I'll also caution you, because one of the things that we look at when we go to hire people, what we do not like is job jumpers. So if you're somebody that's continuously and appreciate the motivation and the idea that you strive for a better opportunity, if you're going to stay at some place for 6 months and then jump to another job opportunity every 6 months, that doesn't make a lot of sense, because the worry would be in hiring you, are you jumping as well? You should always think about, in the big picture, does your resume make sense? If I were to sit in front of you to say, and whether you're a class of 2018 or 2011, where we look at the progression of your resume, And it should make sense. You should not be a job jumper. You should not go back and forth into various industries that are completely unrelated. And granted, everybody has one, maybe two on their resumes why they do it, but it should not be a consistent pattern. So when you do make that move, make it while you're young, be thoughtful, and be able to articulate that in the job interview for the next job that you're going for. Here's what I did in the past, which maybe I didn't like. Here's what I want to do going forward. However, this is the benefits I got from that, and this is why I'm transitioning over to this industry.
Yep, having a good sort of narrative about what's motivating you is even if you've been forced out of a job and forced toward a pivot, the process of reflection that gets you to where you can tell a story, really important. I'm going to turn now to practical advice. How do you do it? Some of you out there may have tuned in tonight because it's on your mind. But before I throw this out to Jeremy and Lauren, we're going to hear from Rudy Klein-Thomas one last time.
I started my company very, very early after graduating from school. And I did so because there was nothing out there that kind of represented what I wanted to do specifically. You know, I wanted to follow my passion, and I started my own company. And there was a give and take in doing so. A lot of it was I was naive to, you know, a lot of the undertakings and how big the opportunity was, and all the pitfalls of things that I hadn't experienced before and that I was going to face. So I learned a lot of lessons the hard way. And I didn't have any mentors as well too. So I wasn't able to take a lot of the experiences that people and mistakes that people had made before me and learn from them. So I will say that is to get as many mentors as possible and gravitate to a lot of the people that are doing something similar or exactly what you're trying to accomplish, and gravitate towards them and take on mentors. I have plenty of mentors now, and it's something that I've attuned to now, you know, later in my career. But again, you know, earlier when I was starting out, it's something that I wish I would have done, that I didn't do, and it would have saved me a lot of time and effort and a lot of the pitfalls and
so that's Rudy's advice. He said he didn't have mentors, and you know, for a lot of us, that's true. You know, I know early in my career, it used to frustrate me when I would hear people say, "Oh yeah, I had a sponsor, I had a mentor. That's how I got that job." You know, I was half first generation. My dad had gone to college, but he passed away when I was young, and my mom had not. So I didn't have all those sort of, you know, ready-made connections. So I'm going to turn this to Jeremy and then to Lauren. So Jeremy, you know, did you network? Did you use LinkedIn? Did you go back to school? Did you use mentors? How'd you figure out how to make money helping brewers brew beer?
That's a great question, right? So as it comes, you know, I was talking about entrepreneurship, right? And it's sometimes in that space, it's really hard to have those mentors, right? To find that person compared to a corporate structure where you can really hook yourself to a really inspiring person that's 2 levels up, and you follow that person up the chain, or ask for advice to be able to pivot to another company and do something similar and have those conversations. I was actually very, very fortunate in life to come from a family of entrepreneurs at some level. My father was an entrepreneur, starting his marketing communications firm, and he surrounded himself by people that were big idea people. And I think I just completely and utterly took that in. He is still at 81, one of the greatest networkers I've ever met in my life. And he really told me a very valuable tool about really connecting with people, and the ability to have the networking conversations As I like to say, I almost take every phone call within the industry, because I always like to say the worst thing that's going to happen is a good conversation, right? It might not lead to anything, but we're always interconnecting and doing the networks. From my perspective, in terms of my pivot and getting into a totally different category after I left the firm was all about networks and all about connections. I knew that I liked the idea that I was creating. I figured I was actually very good at connecting the dots with people, but I actually needed some other skill sets on the side. And I connected with a wonderful partner. His only negative is that he didn't go to Providence College, but he had strengths I didn't have. A really strong financial background, really strong on the strategy side of it. And I became sort of the front person to get the business development going and to really kind of build that up while he was building the models behind. And it's actually been quite a wonderful partnership in that regards. What I always realized is you need great people in the room in order to be successful. And that comes from networking. One of my favorite lines, and I wish I could always remember who said it, was, if you think you're the smartest person in the room, leave that room immediately. And that's the fact that you want to be surrounded by great people. And networking is incredible. When LinkedIn was created, I thought it was one of the greatest things ever, right? The ability to connect people of interest and like-minded and affinity groups like Providence College, just to expand your network and have those conversations. And it's interesting, even I was thinking about this today, while my child is entering the sort of college this discovery phase while he's in high school, is part of my metrics of looking at a school for him is looking at what the alumni do and what's their network and how are they doing, right? And I think it's incredibly important. I think one of the true values in going to an institution is one, the ability to connect with people that really care about an institution, but that are doing wonderful things. And not only do I do that in my current business, but I also do that outside as well. And a lot of it has to do around Providence College.
Well, I hope he makes the right choice and comes to PC, but
he wants to be a runner, so we're negotiating, and he's not the skill level at Providence College, but we're working on it.
Yeah,
we're working on it.
That one's tough. That one's tough. You got to be really fast to run at Providence College. So Lauren, what resources did you draw on?
Yeah, I think my biggest resource, Jeremy spoke to as well, is the power of networking. After my first job out of college, when I worked in insurance, every single job that I've had afterwards, even the jobs where I advanced within an organization, has been through networking. And that networking wasn't necessarily tapping a tool like LinkedIn, but actually truly connecting with people so that when opportunities arose, Lauren Jones came to mind for that person to share with someone else, or for that person to think of me. And so I'm really fortunate and thankful for the opportunity to build a network where I have felt comfortable with either people that were within my organization that I could engage with and learn from, and they recognize my interest in growing my career professionally, but then also being in different rooms within the Boston business community, where I've been able to, I think, build my 21st century version of my Rolodex, and it's been through that power of networking. And so I think what's really important to think about for the alumni and that are thinking about what to do, don't start networking just now. Think about networking over your career. Certainly networking can come in handy if you're trying to consider pivoting or next opportunities today, but also think about what you want to do today to advance your network for 10 years from now, even a year from now, because it really can make a big difference. when you're not even looking, actually, which in some cases for the different changes in jobs and roles that I've had, some actually did come where I was not even looking. And it was all through the power of networking.
Sylvia, if I can add, Lauren, you make a great point, is that in that green zone and yellow zone is where you should be networking. You should not be networking in the red zone. We've all seen it when people come out of school and they're desperate for a job, and it really comes across in the way that you interact and you speak with people on the phone. And what I've learned and trying and when speaking with people who are looking for opportunities is that you should be networking all the time. And the Providence College network is tremendous because people will talk to you. They will get on the phone because they've done the same thing as you as well. So, the ability to realize sort of where you are and doing this all the time. And the worst thing you could do is get on the phone and be desperate and ask for a job. It's so much better where you say, listen, I'm at a job opportunity. This is what I'm doing. I'd love to get you on the phone for 20 minutes. Just talk to you about your background and what you do. That is such an easy conversation for me to do, as opposed for somebody that picks up the phone and says, I'm looking for a job. If I don't have a job opportunity at my firm, unfortunately, I may not get on the phone with you. If you're a PC student, obviously I will, but it's a missed opportunity. So networking all the time, especially when you're in that green and yellow zone, is incredibly important.
And if you don't mind me adding to that, it's networking is not a quick fix transactional relationship, right? It is about having conversations that help you create self-discovery and grow and learn. And you go with affinities and you connect with some wonderful people. And you should be looking, when you're connecting with people, you're really trying to build very long-term relationships as it relates to that.
And once you have that network, it makes it that much easier when you are in one of those situations where you do need help, you do need to pivot, you do need to find a new job. Someone like Chris might remember the conversation that they had with you and know who you are and what you're about and what you're looking for, so that when he does have a position open, he might, hey, Jeremy would fit this perfectly. So having that foundation is important for every phase, as everyone has said. But it's it's getting easier and easier to hide on LinkedIn and send a message and make yourself stand out. So it's beneficial to do the groundwork first before you're in a pinch.
So Paul, you're good at networking. I've worked with you when it's been clear that you had invested in networking. How are you in COVID times? You said, how are you? What advice do you have for networking? Now when we can't. It's Thursday night when we can't go out for a beer after work, face to face.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think COVID has kind of changed the game. The past 7 or 8 months, everyone in quarantine, even though things are a little bit better than they were before, as far as being able to actually step foot outside of your house. I think people still have a lot of time on their hands, and people have gone through kind of a reflective stage, reevaluating every stage of their life. And I think a lot of people are at a position, no matter where you are in your career, where they genuinely want to help. I've never seen the amount of, even on LinkedIn alone, if you look, the number of people that have put themselves out there and said, if you're in a position where you have lost a job as a result of what is going on, or someone that needs help, please reach out to me. And if I'm willing to help you, or if I can't, I'll try and help, connect you with someone who might align. I think people are putting themselves out there, and you just have to be courageous and take advantage of those opportunities when it makes sense, and that it's aligned with what you want to accomplish. I think, as I was kind of alluding to before, like, it's easy to send a LinkedIn message, but you need to put a little bit more meaning behind it. Do your homework ahead of time so that you know who the person actually is, what they've done in their career, and provide them a little bit insight into the actual reason why you're reaching out to them, aside from coming across desperate, as Chris was saying, but saying, I've noticed you've done X, Y, and Z in your career, and it's really fascinates me that you pivoted, you know, from the military, you know, back to finance or something of that sort. But when you add that personal connection and tie into it, it makes people genuinely want to connect with you, and appreciates the outreach a little bit more. So I think, you know, the Providence network is huge. The amount of calls our office has been getting throughout this time about, you know, what do PC students need? What are you hearing? How are the graduating seniors doing? What about the young alums? I think the Providence community is ready and willing to help. And, you know, LinkedIn can be a dark hole, but we also have, you know, a lot of opportunities within PC with our own FireLink community of people who have already, you know, raised their hands and said, we want to help Providence students specifically. So, you know, tapping into those different opportunities is incredibly advantageous to you because you have that at your fingertips. So that's kind of my general tips right now.
Great, and thank you so much. Heather put a link to, if you're not all on FireLink, Heather put the link in the chat so you can explore that resource. Was somebody going to jump in? I didn't cut anybody off. Okay, great. Well, you guys have been awesome. I actually learned a few things. It is far too easy to hide behind a LinkedIn message, but LinkedIn is an incredible resource. I often get students coming to me and asking, you know, and I can tell that they haven't really thought about it enough yet. And so I say, like, go through all my connections on LinkedIn and, you know, find 5 people who I'm connected to that you really want to be connected to, and why, and, you know, write me that email about those 5 people and why you want to have a conversation with them. And so I make them do a little bit of homework, because that's where the self-reflection starts. It's like, okay, this person's career seems really interesting. I want to be that person. Well, why? We've got
Can I add one point to that though?
Yeah.
That is really step 2. Step 1 for you, if you were to call and interact with Sylvia, what you have to do, even though this may be an informational interview, if you do not show up prepared for that, as Paul has outlined, with some good questions, good dialogue, if you just show up there where you have a dialogue where you haven't done any homework, you're going to come across as unimpressive. And if you're unimpressive, the idea of me reaching out through my network, which is a reflection of me, to introduce you to someone who was, you know, at best okay on a call, that's a hard thing to do. So if you show up to that call, you have good questions, good dialogue, you don't seem desperate, that's when you're going to get that offer to say, look through my LinkedIn network. And the way you should think about it is, it's a spider web. Once you hook up with Sylvia as the dean here, then that spreads out across other people in her network as well. And the last thing I'll say is that you need to keep following up with these people. If you had good conversations with a person that you felt you really connected with, check in once per quarter, do a rifle shot approach, put a tickler in your Outlook email to say, follow up with Dean, with Sylvia, to talk about what we did last time and what I've been up to. Because what you do is you stay top of mind. So if a job opportunity does come about, you know, and therefore, you know, it just opens up different avenues and allows you to stay, you know, connected to these people. And you should do that on a quarterly basis. And it doesn't have to be any requests. It's just, this is what I've been up to. I've met with this person. I've done this. I followed up with what you say, and here's the progress.
Great. Thanks for jumping in there, Chris. This has been awesome. I'm really glad we're recording it, because I'm thinking that maybe we can make this available as a resource. We have just a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes for questions. Okay. I used to have this question when I was younger all the time. Everyone talks about using mentors, but how do you actually, if you're looking in search of a mentor, as opposed to when I was younger, I was always like, well, you know, so easy for somebody who wakes up one day and says, I want to be a mentor, to go out and find a mentee. But if you're the person who wants the mentor, how do you how do you go about setting up that kind of relationship?
That's a tough question, right? Because I feel like you only find a true mentor if it's within either your workspace or within sort of your network, right? I mean, I don't think you can just read a bio and say this is the person, this is it, right? Because it might not be. I think that's just a journey that everyone is on, and you just have to see where it comes from. But I don't think you can just. It has to be much more organic in nature than just seeing someone's bio and thinking that's going to be the person.
Anybody? Yeah, Lauren.
So I'll admit, I don't think I have a mentor today. I'd love to have one, but even after 15 years, I don't have a professional mentor. I definitely have what I like to call trusted board of advisors. So they don't know that they're all on this advisory board for me, but when I need to navigate something, I have that short list of people that I trust and that I know can give me that professional guidance, whether it's one-off or over time. Yet I still don't know if that would definitely capture that full mentorship that you may typically see within the workspace or someone that's a little more intimate within your network. So if mentoring or mentorship or trying to find that mentor sounds intimidating, just think about what you're looking for. And if you're really looking for advice, know that you could also build that network of trusted advisors who could maybe also be a mentor for you as well.
When I was a year,
we had
go ahead, Sylvia.
No, go for it, Paul.
When I was a year, just real quick, when I was a year into my job, we brought someone into our office from another institution, and within the first 6 months or so, I was really impressed and really just admired the work that they had done and the value that they were bringing to the team. So it's something as simple as, I just reached out and asked, can we grab a cup of coffee sometime? I love to learn more about your background. In the actual meeting, I said, I was kind of all over the place. I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay in higher ed, if I wanted to move over to the fundraising side, and I'm looking for some guidance and some mentorship, and an easy connection like that, just over a cup of coffee. That person has now become my sounding board as I've, thought about different decisions throughout, my 8 years at Providence. So it can be something, it doesn't have to be a formal, binding relationship. It can be something just as simple as, someone aligns with your vision and your values and you just want to connect and have coffee and kind of see where it goes from there. So it doesn't have to be intimidating by any means.
Yeah, great advice. Here's another question, and I really, it's also a hard question. So this sounds like this person might be in the red zone. I know I'm ready to make a career change, but I'm not really sure what I want to change to. Do you have any advice on processes, suggestions for how to figure that out and gain clarity?
My suggestion would just be, believe it or not, you probably have a great network between your family, your friends, Providence College, whether you played sports or not, and it's really time to start investigating that. What I'd caution is some people just get into the red zone and they quit their job and may not have the financial means to really explore anything, and then the first opportunity comes up that they take it. So if you still have a job, stick with it, but really start pushing forward on the ignition for the the networking. And again, be very thoughtful about how you do this. You're not going to find a job. Rarely will you find a job on LinkedIn. Rarely will you find a job on Glassdoor or any other opportunities that are just broad based on the internet. You need to connect with people. So you just need to sit down, clear head, and just map out how are you going to go about. What things do I like? I have some friends who really like their jobs. I'm going to talk about them, what they do. It really depends on where this pivot's going to be. Is it tangential? Is it more linear in what you want to do next? But start having those dialogues and conversations about speaking with people who like what they do, and maybe you'll find a nice match for what you're looking for.
And just
Lauren, you were
okay.
smiling. Did you
Oh.
want to jump in?
Yeah, I think it actually builds on what Chris was saying towards the end. I think you want to first ask yourself, what's your passion? So clearly this person has recognized that they want to change jobs. Something's not right in their current job and they're looking for something, but they may not know what that is. So just ask yourself, what makes you tick? What is something that you want to be doing on a day-to-day basis in your job that you're excited about, that you could be passionate about? And I feel like, as I think it was referred to earlier, 2020 has made so many people stop and think about what they're passionate about, because we're working remotely, we're working in such a tough climate, both economy, politics, life, being quarantined. And so you really may ask, like, what is it that I want to give my time and my energy to? And if you don't know what that is, think about, to what Chris said, like, what makes other people tick, and how are other people thriving in their jobs, and what is it that they love? And then you can start realizing that some things that people love about their job, you may have that love and you didn't realize that you could apply that professionally. And so I would just pause it and think about really what excites you.
Yeah. What are you drawn to? This,
Mhm.
I think one of the themes here is, if you keep that question in mind, what am I drawn to? And use that as a part of your life, your networking will sort of happen naturally, because that curiosity about what am I drawn to will lead you to connections with other people. A big, huge Friar thank you to the audience, and to our wonderful, wonderful panelists, to Lauren and to Jeremy and Paul and Chris. Shout out to some amazing staff people in the at PC and in the PCSB Dean's office. This wouldn't have happened without you, so thank you. And a final, if you haven't filled out the Poets and Quants survey and you're the class of 2018, please do so and pass it on. If you're in touch with friends from 2018. Ultimately, our ranking in Poets and Quants makes your diplomas that much more valuable. And we, as you probably know, have had a meteoric rise in the National Undergraduate Business School ranking. So we're trying to keep that rise going. But again, a huge thank you to our panelists. A big Friar hug. Here we go. There's the hug. So stay safe, everybody, and cheers to careers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.